When cocky fighters face reality, the results can be as brutal as they are satisfying. Overconfidence can be a fighter's greatest weakness, whether it's in the ring or the cage. Trash talk and taunts are risky when you can't back them up.
Come on, man.
Time and time again, we've seen arrogance clash with skill, and the outcome is rarely pretty. And these next 9 fighters had their arrogance shattered in the most humiliating way possible. First up, we have Hiromoto versus Hagawara. Ren Hiromoto, known for his signature greeting gesture, stepped into the ring to face Hagawara, a fighter with extensive wrestling experience. One glance, and it was obvious he was fully prepared for the fight. The fight had barely started when Hagawara landed a sharp right hook and immediately went for a takedown. Hiromoto, unwilling to stay on the ground, managed to bring the fight back to a standing position. However, sheer determination wasn't enough, as Hagawara relentlessly pursued his game plan. Finally, Hagawara succeeded in taking control, securing the top mount. From there, he eagerly unleashed a relentless beatdown on his opponent. After his dominant victory, Hagawara performed a traditional execution-like action, adding yet another win to his record. Next, we've got Maurice Adorf versus Alexander Weens. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, they say, but unfortunately that message doesn't always carry through in a cage fight. For Maurice Adorf, his clear admiration of Conor McGregor led him to adopt the notorious fighter's look and even mimic his fighting style. While this got him some viral attention early on, especially after performing decently in his first few bouts, the reality hit hard when he faced a real test. When Adorf eventually ran into a brick wall in the form of Alexander Weens, the difference between him and the UFC's two-weight champion was undeniable. From the start, Adorf struggled with his defense, and it wasn't long before Weens capitalized on his weaknesses, ultimately TKOing him in the opening round. You've probably heard the saying, fake it till you make it, but in a fist fight, not so much. Now, this next fighter did something outrageous and paid for it. On June 10, 2016, her 30-year-old Dutch fighter Myrtle Gronhart faced Armenian contender Harit Grigorian. In the first round, Grigorian relentlessly pressured Gronhart, never giving him a moment to relax. Realizing his impending defeat, which would cost him a shot at the title, Gronhart took advantage of a brief opening and knocked Grigorian out from behind.
Defend yourself at all times!
While the phrase "defend yourself at all times" might apply to that knockout, it hardly justifies the action. Gronhart immediately began celebrating, but at that moment, Grigorian's team rushed to the ring, and a scandal quickly spread across the internet, with fans calling for a rematch. 6 months later, the two fighters met again, this time with Gronhart holding the champion's belt, making the stakes much higher. Grigorian had spent all that time dreaming of revenge, eager to beat the arrogant fighter who had humiliated him. As the day finally arrived, his face showed no emotion, an unsettling calm that seemed to put fear in his opponent. The entire crowd rallied behind Grigorian, adding even more pressure for Gronhart to defend his title.
Pivot out. Don't stay center. Oh, that right hand connected. Hey, Gronhart is dead. That is a knockdown. The champ is down here in round 1.
When the fight resumed, Gronhart was already on shaky legs after the first knockdown, barely able to stand. Grigorian, however, was relentless, and without hesitation, he avenged the previous incident. Ultimately claiming the champion's belt. Now, this next fighter is a prime example of what happens when you take your taunting too far. There's nothing terribly wrong with some in-ring taunting to get the crowd hyped up. Hell, you might even provoke your opponent into making a mistake. But Shenai Shakta took his whole gimmick way too far. Sure, he was landing some good shots earlier, putting on a show for the fans. But once the tide turned, he was made to look foolish. His bottom game was exposed with some major holes in his defense. 1 minute he's taunting his opponent, landing shot after shot on the feet. The next, he's a bloody mess, taking brutal punishment from his back, and unable to get back on his feet. Now, Taunting your opponent and losing is humiliating enough, but announcing it beforehand? That's next level embarrassment.
I'm Hurricane Peter McNeely from Medfield, Mass. On Saturday night, watch me kick Tyson's ass.
Peter McNeely was considered a highly promising talent, with a record of 36 wins and just 1 loss. However, his luck ran out when he had to face Mike Tyson, who had just been released from prison. During his time behind bars, Tyson converted to Islam and trained relentlessly, emerging in the best physical shape of his life. McNeely, however, didn't take Tyson seriously and recklessly charged at him. For Tyson, opponents like McNeely were nothing more than breakfast. After being knocked down early, McNeely got back up and circled the ring, signaling that he was fine. But when he tried to go on the offensive again, he got wrecked and ended up losing like a total joke. While some fighters get caught in their own arrogance, others channel their anger into something more powerful, like this next fighter, who used his rage to deliver some sweet revenge. After a submission attempt was thwarted by what appeared to be a combination of fish hooking and eye gouging, Joshua Parcio had every reason to be furious.
Had his fingers in the eye of Joshua Parcio.
When the fight resumed, he turned up the intensity in a major way, landing a massive spinning back fist right to his opponent's jaw. And just to make sure the message was clear, he threw one more shot to the jaw. While we usually don't condone adding extra punishment, in this case it was somewhat understandable. After all, that was some pretty blatant cheating, and it seemed like the bad karma was well deserved. While some fighters are just cocky, others take disrespect to a whole new level, and this next guy was in desperate need of a humbling. What the guy in the red shirt did was downright disgusting. With a cigarette dangling from his mouth, he blew smoke in his opponent's face and shoved him. But that was just the beginning of the humiliation. At the press conference, when Shane Mosley's wife bent over, the disrespectful jerk slapped her on the butt. Mosley's wife got some revenge by throwing water on him, but that wasn't nearly enough. Filled with rage and a burning desire to reclaim his dignity, Mosley entered the ring with cold, emotionless focus, ready to destroy the rat in front of him. It didn't take long to see who the superior fighter was. Mosley dominated his cocky opponent in every way. Still, out of ignorance and desperation, Ricardo Mayorga continued to mock and shout, trying to assert himself, but Mosley wasn't here to play. He landed one clean punch and it sent Mayorga crying. That punch restored Mosley's honor in the process. Just like Mayorga, this next fighter had the cocky attitude but lacked the skill to back it up. We understand that sometimes competitive energy can get the best of a fighter, but when you start manufacturing beef in a low-level fight just to hype yourself up, it's not a good sign. For Jerome Agbude, his decision to refuse a handshake with his opponent, Thomas Owen, turned him into a fierce enemy. It's one thing if you back up your attitude with a solid performance, but unfortunately for Jerome, he had a tough night at the office, getting knocked out in just 21 seconds after eating a hard counter. It's not that shaking hands would have made the fight any easier, but at least he could have avoided becoming a viral embarrassment, right? And just when you think it can't get worse, this final fighter takes cocky behavior to a whole new level. Alex Walters Hannon was no stranger to childish behavior, but this time he took things a step too far. In a shocking moment, he landed a cheap gut punch on his opponent, Andrei Mikhailovich, clearly signaling that he thought he was on a higher level. At the time, Mikhailovich was a rising star with a flawless 15-0 record, while Hannon held an unbeaten streak of 13-0. But all of that would soon change. Realizing that Mikhailovich was stronger and more skilled than he had anticipated, Hannon resorted to dirty tactics. What he didn't expect was that every underhanded move would only fuel his opponent's anger, and that the payback would come in a way he could never have predicted. By the time Hannon sat slumped and defeated, he knew his time was up, but Mikhailovich wasn't done yet. With a final act of revenge, Mikhailovich spat on Hannon's neck, sending a clear message. The Russian wasn't just beating him in the fight, he was teaching him a painful lesson in respect. And just to make sure Hannon learned, Mikhailovich delivered a brutal finishing blow.
Victory for the Russian Kiwi, Andrei Mikhailovich.
ensuring the cocky fighter would regret every moment of his disgraceful behavior. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay humble and keep fighting.